On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks are in the playoffs. They will be the 4 seed, but everyone is holding their breath about Luka Doncic, his calf strain. What does it mean? What's the timetable? What's our instant reaction? We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, where you can subscribe to the show at Locked On Mavericks. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, contributor at Mavs.com, the Twitter doctor, dude, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
It's crazy how one moment can just change like your whole week. Like we were so, I was so prepared to go into this week. You know, we've planned out this whole pod for the whole week and
playing the whole week.
Just different things we have planned for the pod this week. And those things will still happen, but it just changes. There's so much excitement. And I think there's still excitement for the Mavs getting home court and a playoffs, making that jump from last year's seeding up and to this year.
50 wins for the first time since 2011, like all that.
Heck yes. And I think at the end of this pod, we'll look at some positives of just the Mavs going into the playoffs and how we can look at a few things. But I mean, one of the biggest storylines of the whole NBA right now, not just for the Mavs, is this freaking Luka Doncic injury.
Luka Doncic in the third quarter comes up limping on a play. If you go back and I watched this play over and over again, Kevin Gray and I were looking at it on my iPad just while the game was still going on. I don't even know if I watched a single second of that third quarter because I was watching this play back and forth. But Luka goes to the nail basically, and he turns around and does throws a pass back to either Dorian or Josh Green, I think. He throws a pass around, like he turns his back to the basket, turns around, jumps in midair. And then as he's sort of going back to the 3-point line, so he's like at the nail around the free throw line area, he plants back on his left foot, and his back foot just goes way back behind him, almost like he's trying to like get a running start. And he throws his foot back there, and immediately he takes a step forward and like powers forward, and then he just immediately grabs his left calf and he starts kind of limping, and then he just kind of stands at one spot. And at that point, the arena just kind of like lost all the energy. There's a lot of energy in the arena. There was a lot of people there. There's always a ton of Spurs fans that sit in those sections on like the one side of the one basket, the opposite side of where like the Maniacs and the drumline are. There's always a ton of Spurs fans over there. So there's a ton of energy in the arena. And then Luka plants and he's holding his calf, and he doesn't even go up the court. Like he doesn't even try. And so the energy's completely taken out of the building. And then Luka, with some help from Moses Wright a little bit, and then Finney-Smith comes over. They walk off the court. After the timeout is called, they walk off the court. Luka walks off on his own power. He's definitely limping, and I watched him the whole way. He was limping. He was holding his left calf a little bit, and he walked off with his own power. Went straight to the locker room. Didn't even go back to the bench. And Finney-Smith and him went back into the locker room. And then we got the report that there's initial like optimism from the Mavericks that it's not a significant injury. And so you released your breath a little bit, like you exhaled just a little bit, but it's still concerning.
Yeah. So Mavs, PR tweets out a little bit after that about it being a left calf strain. Obviously Woj, tweeted out a short time after that, like Nick said, giving some optimism to it. Then Twitter doctors just started coming out of the caves with just throwing timelines at the wall like it was. I mean, I was seeing Google screenshots. I saw a personal testimony of a guy who said, hey, I had a calf strain in high school and it took me blank amount of time to get over it. I'm like, you might be a little different than Luka Doncic. I could be, going on a limb.
I'm going to guess this guy's not 6'8", 250 or whatever Luka is now at this point in the season.
It was just wild where just everybody was just collectively, holy crap. Like, you've got to be kidding me. I initially kind of joked to myself, Well, dang it. I wish the league office wasn't open yesterday. And because as we all know, he got the tech, last game, got suspended for the Spurs game. We talked to Mavs PR at halftime of that game and kind of I'm like, hey, what's the whole process? For this getting this tech rescinded? And it's kind of, dependent on if the league was going to be in the office, and the league was.
And damn it, somebody had to be working that weekend.
The intern was working, and it gets
not
rescinded.
Ours, somebody else's.
Yeah. And no, not talking about you. And Luka gets the tech rescinded. He obviously plays in this game, and they go into it. The last set of games that was undecided: Golden State, Dallas. Golden State, they tipped at the same time. Golden State versus New Orleans. Dallas, at home against San Antonio. And everybody was watching the score of the Golden State game, including the Dallas bench. Okay.
Oh, for sure.
So I know Kid denied it after the game.
I bet Jared Dudley had it playing on his phone while he was sitting there on the bench.
Theo Pinson said they knew. He said post game that they knew what the score was in this game. And I'm just going to be honest. I have praised this coaching staff of the job they've done this year. I've praised Jason Kidd for the adjustments and a lot of things that he's done this year. I texted Nick early on in the third quarter, and I said, Luka needs to be out of this game. And here's the thing. The Warriors Pelicans score with 9:01 left in the third quarter of the Warriors Pelicans game. The score was 81-52, a 29-point lead for the Warriors. If I'm down, and listen, I don't like ever being that guy of like, oh, I would have taken them, I would have did that, whatever. If the Luka injury happened in the first quarter, I'm like, hey, I don't think there's any blame to throw out there because Luka has to play.
There's still something to play for.
There's still something to play for, and there is a chance New Orleans could beat Golden State. But if it's in the second half and Golden State's up by 29 points, and I get New Orleans made a run after that, but Golden State still won pretty well. I'm taking the guys out. Like, I'm just like, they're up by 29. I'm taking it out. Jason Kidd obviously disagreed and said, hey, he went into the game saying, I'm playing the starters their normal minutes because we're going to have a layoff of 5 to 6 days. And I want them to get their normal. I just disagree with that. And I mean, obviously he's the coach. He's a millionaire. He knows what he's doing. And I'm just a podcaster, but I hated that Luka was in the game at that time. Or any of the starters, not just Luka.
Know. I may even take it a step further. This Mavericks team depends so much on Luka. You can't chance anything. You just can't chance anything. And I think they really risked it tonight and just, took it to chance playing him, especially in that second half. But even the whole game, I usually don't trend on, hey, why was he even playing in the first place and complain about that. But I kind of wonder, like, maybe because they went through the whole charade of submitting the technical to get rescinded and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, man. This one's a tough one.
Just to move up, just for the chance to move up one spot.
I think they still could have beat those Spurs without Luka, and they depend on Luka so much that I think that, man, I wish, obviously now hindsight for sure, but I wish they would have said, hey, like, let's just sit and let you, you'll still make the money from the game, so we'll get the tech rescinded so you can play. But I don't know. That was my initial reaction. Now we're looking at timelines, right? There's all kinds of different people talking about timelines, and I know that Tim McMahon was tweeting a lot about different things that different players that have had different timelines, but In Street Clothes had the best one, I think. He's a guy that tracks injuries. That's like basically what he does. That's what him and our friend Dr. Brian. I've reached out to Dr. Brian and we'll hope to have him on this week. But him and Dr. Brian even have like a podcast that they do together. Like they're probably the two best voices when it comes to injuries. He had a really good tweet about the timeline and everything like that. So let's talk about that. We'll talk about the timeline and then the ramifications for this injury. Like, what could it mean? What could a timeline mean if it's a longer timeline, if it's a shorter timeline? When do the Mavs play in the playoffs? Does that matter? All that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're delicious. I had one on the way home, coconut brownie chunk. It was great. Calm my nerves down a little bit. Sometimes, you just need a little chocolate. Like in Harry Potter when they have the Dementors. Like, how do you help yourself after the Dementors come? You just eat a little chocolate. Sometimes you just need that. Built Bar has that for you. Their bar's covered in 100% chocolate. You can get them right now Available. Double chocolate, 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar. The mint brownie, which is always a solid one, same thing. Go check them out at built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your entire order. 100% chocolate, 100% delicious. Some of them have puffs with the marshmallow in the middle. Check them all out. It's built.com. Promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. This week, it is the playoff and play-in preview pod. This should be a really, really good one. Everyone should go listen to it. It's everybody's, all the local experts' reaction and their predictions for the playoffs for their team. Great stuff. Go check it out. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. That's Locked On Now. All right, Isaac. In Street Clothes had a really great tweet about calf injuries and what it has meant for certain players this year. And he said, regarding Luka, there's a lot of variability in calf strains. The calf is actually a muscle complex made up of multiple muscles. Severity and location will factor into resulting recovery. Average time lost for calf strains in the NBA this season. Now, he takes every single injury in the NBA. He tracks all of them, figures out when it is. He probably hates the Grizzlies and the Nets because those teams are terrible with injuries and timelines and things like that. But he tracks all of them and says that the average time lost for a calf strain in the NBA this season was 16 days. Now, you got to think that some of those are like the really severe tears and things like that. We already know it's not that, right? We already know that it's not that. So you think about some of the longer timelines are going to really affect this. The median was 17 days lost. The minimum this season for a calf strain was 3 days, is what he tracked. Quote, the Mavs medical team dealt with a calf strain earlier this season. Frank Ntilikina, he missed 4 games. That's 12 days in late November with a right calf strain. So the Mavs have dealt with this a little bit before. It's Luka. We know how he is about injuries. Sometimes it feels like he gets injured every game and comes back. He's got the Wolverine adamantium blood, it seems like at times. But minimum of 3 days seems to me like that at least gave me a little bit of encouragement going into this. That even if you call it a calf strain, there's a chance that he is good by the end of this week. The 6 days, 5 or 6 days the Mavs have off before they actually play the first game of the playoffs.
So this is probably common sense, but don't when you start to compare, and this is talking to listeners here, when you start to compare other players who've had this injury, don't go by the games play or games missed part, because there's obviously a big chunk of days here until they play the next game. Because where if somebody looks at him and be like, oh, Frank missed 4 games, Luka 4 games. Well, it's not the same thing. Go by the amount of actual like time,
physical
time
days.
Physical days part of this, because something that kid just casually threw out there. We've been doing the math, just putting the pieces together when Dallas game 1 is going to be, because obviously the play-in championship, whatever you want to call that, is on Friday. So just figuring it out here, they're not going to probably put those guys playing against the 1 or 2 seeds on Saturday, because they're at least going to give them a day off in between for them to travel to that next city. So therefore pushing those games to Sunday. So now you have your, the 4 5s and the 3 6s have to play on Saturday. It just has to be. Exactly. Then on top of that, we also knew the Stars are going to play Saturday night in Dallas at 7:00. So it's like, all right, this is going to be an afternoon game for Dallas. And then bam, kid just threw out there 12 noon on Saturday. And they've known this. And it was just like literally the worst possible time for Dallas, to draw that. Now let's just like cross our fingers that there's some grace shown. It's like, hey, game 2 can be Tuesday night instead of Monday. That one would be nice. That would be nice for sure, which it can't happen. We've seen that, even though normally when it's the 2 games that are in one spot, they don't give more than 1 day off. So it's probably going to be that Monday, But yeah, so the Mavericks will have these 5 days. They're going to have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all off. And then they'll play that early game on Saturday. And no traveling. You pointed that out on Twitter that, hey, there's no traveling. This game was at home. They're going to host the game on that Saturday at home. So he doesn't have to go anywhere. So that's definitely a plus. And I think, you brush past. Unless he does a Kobe, it goes to Germany. Like if we see like a private plane, plane going. If we see Luka going to Germany for what, a platelet rich, what were the things that Kobe would get and whoever a platelet rich blood injection or something like that. And we'd be like, okay. Yeah, you kind of glossed over to say, hey, we know it's not a tear. I would say we don't know 100% it's not that, just by what we're saying that there's an initial optimism going by. I thought an underrated quote.
Do you not trust the text from Casey Smith that he probably sent Woj as soon as this happened? You don't trust that he would have told him, hey, it's a tear. We know it.
But like there was, Jalen Brunson talked about his interaction with Luka post game. And I thought that was at least a little encouraging. Not that players tell the truth all the time to their teammates, but Brunson said he did talk with Luka post game. They did dab up talk. Luka said, hey, I'm good. Brunson's like, I expect him to play. And that's just, I think a part of that, of being a friend and a teammate, is like, hey, I expect my guy to be out there. But if you want to take a next step further, do we think that Luka would have told him I'm good and like he's so positive if it was like a full tear and like this isn't recoverable in the foreseeable future? I don't think that happens. So I think it's more of the route you're saying of like, hey, let's see what it's besides that.
And part of Brunson's response was he's a warrior. Like he's played through stuff before. Like Luka is not a guy that'll he's not Anthony Davis, right? Like, can we go there? Like, he's not Anthony Davis where he gets dinged up and falls to the ground and then he's out for 4 games, right? Like, Luka has played through some stuff already. He watched Dirk play through stuff. And so I think he took from that. And, I think that he is a guy that wants to play. He's always out there. He wants to play. He'll, smack his leg a couple times and get up and keep playing.
Was it bad that it was a little like the boy cried wolf a little bit, that he grabbed his leg and he started going like, all right, just shake it off. You've done it a million times.
I did the same thing. And I know you listening, you probably did the same thing. Oh, he's fine. He's holding it.
Yep.
But what was different about this? Bro. What was different about this though is he stood in one spot. He didn't move, right? Like he tried to take another step forward and said, ooh, this feels different than something before. And so that's where the concern comes from. If he had kept if he had run down the end of the court and then just went to the bench, was like, hey, I'm not feeling right, and then he and Casey Smith went to the locker room, I think you and I would be a little bit more encouraged. But because he stopped and literally like didn't move his 2 feet, like he put his 2 feet together and he just stood there and was feeling his calf, didn't even like look up to see where the ball was or anything like that. The only thing on his mind was, hey, this doesn't feel right, and I'm not right to keep playing in this game.
Yeah. Anyway, they fouled he went right out of the game, right to the locker room, needed help getting there. So it's not fun. It's not fun at all. And so they get Utah. Obviously Golden State won the game, and now we get this Utah series. And I mean, do we have anything to say about the Spurs game?
Theo Pinson, our guy, Theo Pinson.
More than a hype man.
More than a hype man. I mean, if
that's the last time I'll see him.
If we're gonna, no, we will not. He will be an integral part of that playoff bench and screaming at Rudy Gobert. What did Jerry West do to you? What did Jerry West do to you? What did Jerry West do to you?
But you have to clip that. We gotta play that for. So rumors out there that David Locke could be joining the pod for a crossover this week, and.
Forecast says likely.
Can we just like not preparing for it and just play that clip of Theo Pinson roasting Rudy on that shot, because that's definitely. But
that's amazing. Hey, if you want to play that clip, we will 100% play that clip.
I'm about to quit this pod right now. I've been mad at you. You're gonna keep that on the pod. There's no recovering now.
No, there's not. I knew you could.
Guys, we never get into it. But I was
mom and dad never fight. But today
now we're gonna talk it through on the pod. I was legit mad at Nick a while ago. He said something before the pod that really bothered me. People are gonna think we're like actually joking right now, and we're not.
I'm sorry.
Wait, is that genuine?
I was nervous about Luka, and it made me lash out.
Anyway, if you guys don't know, Theo Pinson as two-way guy
I'm not crying right now. I'm laughing so hard.
Two-way guys are not eligible to play in the playoffs.
Just worried about Luka.
It's kind of a bummer, but I was super happy.
Do they still bring him if he's not eligible?
Oh yeah, he's definitely going to be there. He's got a trash talk. I think Callie even asked him about trash talking after the game, but he had a good game. And I fully expect him not to like jump ahead to the next season here, but
here we go.
I think he's earned a legit roster spot for next year. Like
honestly, those 4 threes made me think like, oh dang, like he's probably gonna play on this team next year.
Love that guy.
Love it. Like, he's definitely taking the Trey Burke spot.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, for sure. So, all right, that's the one positive thing we'll say about this game. Coming up, let's do some more positives, though. Let's trend in a positive direction. We've been Debbie Downer so far. Let's get into the positives, talk about what it means for this team going forward. You know, if he is ready for game one, you know, let's talk about that situation, the ramifications of all that. We'll talk about the good things that have happened to the Mavericks, and let's take a positive look at this and a positive spin on this coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about BetOnline. Oof. That game one line is going to be really, really interesting. I doubt they have it up right now. They don't have any. They only have the play-in lines up right now. Nets, Cavs. How many points do you think that the Nets are favored over the Cavs right now in this play-in game?
9.
8 points. Good call. Clippers, Timberwolves. Who do you think is favored in that game? Timberwolves are the home team. Timberwolves have been the better team, but Clippers have Paul George back, and they've been playing really well.
I'm gonna say Clippers by 3.
Ooh, it's Timberwolves by 2.5.
Whoa.
They're giving credit to the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves have played really well this season, but the Clippers, you're like, I don't know. I feel like that team can definitely win that game. There you go. They also have the Eastern Conference playing games as well. Go check that out. They have everything on BetOnline. They also have some NBA draft stuff as well. If you want to check out some NBA draft stuff, our Locked On NBA Big Board podcast is launching today. 5 days. Rafael Barlow is going to be holding down the fort. The guy that was anointed.
He's great. I love him.
Anointed by Chad Ford as the next guy. He's awesome. And so if you want some draft stuff, they have Jabari Smith as the minus 110 favorite to be the first overall pick. Chet Holmgren, number 2. Paolo is number 3 there. So go check it out. Everything on BetOnline. It's BetOnline where the game starts. All right, Isaac Harris, let's go positive. The sun is shining. The air is clear. The birds are chirping. Let's say that we put all this behind us, and let's say we're taking Brunson's approach to this. He's gonna play. Luka's gonna play. Like, he is such a competitor. He'll be there. He'll play. Dirk played through stuff during the 2011 run. By the way, I said that this was their first 50 win season since 2011. I meant their most wins since 2011. That's what I meant earlier. But Luka's playing through stuff. What are some positives about this team? How can we look on the bright side of this injury?
Well, I mean, the natural positives, we kind of already mentioned that if there's ever a time for Luka to kind of get hurt around this time, it's the time where you have a week off.
Yeah, 5 days.
You know, yeah, I guess you could do the cold counter of like, I wish it happened 2 weeks ago. Who cares about standings and all of that? I was really wanting Utah, so now I guess I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Now that they're facing Utah, I've been clamoring for Utah for, gosh, I don't know, it feels like 2 months now. But let's approach the positives from, let's say Luka, like if Luka has to set out a couple of games, you know what makes me feel a little bit better?
A couple of games. That did not make me feel positive.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if it goes into like a week and a half or something like that, he could, like, what if he does miss a couple of games? You know what makes me feel better? The fact that we have Dinwiddie over Porzingis. Because
100%.
If we had Porzingis, man, that's a lot of Jalen Brunson having to create everything, or Trey Burke. And it's like, now at least we have a guy that is out there in Dinwiddie that can create, that can step into that. Hey, we're going to insert you into that Luka Doncic role at least, and say, keep our same system going. We've been talking about ever since that trade of, hey, when Luka's off the floor, rolling these guys out there, Brunson and Dinwiddie, with, Dorian out there and Bullock. And so that's at least, I'm looking for some positive. I feel a little bit better about it with Dinwiddie instead of KP.
Dinwiddie this year has had a 23-point game against the Jazz when the Mavericks won by 8. He also had a 20-point game against the Jazz with Dallas when they lost that one game by 5, that really close game. And he had a 12-point game in the other win that the Mavericks had, so they didn't really need him as much. So we've seen him put up some numbers against this Utah team. I'm with you 100% that it's so much better that they have 2 ball handlers now, even more so. Even if Luka plays, he's going to be limited a little bit, right? He's not going to be 100% going into this game. So it's good that they have Dinwiddie and Brunson. Like, let's say Luka can't play 40 minutes. Okay, well, that means you have 8 more minutes. You have to try and find some ball handling, some scoring, and that's Dinwiddie all the way. That's Dinwiddie making things happen, figuring stuff out, and that's a huge positive going into this.
And you mentioned this, we were talking before the pod, you mentioned this about the Clippers last year with Utah. And it's like, what gave Utah problems in the playoffs against the Clippers went small. They were rolling all these wings out there, these guys who can dribble, and they didn't have Kawhi, right? Or they didn't
have Kawhi for like the last 2 games, right? It was the last 2 games or last 3. I'll go look it up.
Yeah. So if there's, going back to if there's KP out there and it's like, all right, well, there's not really like a different system mismatch that you're
last
like
2 games.
Last 2 games of that series. So at least they're still running small ball, right? Like at least they're still going to try to take advantage of the, hey, Rudy matchup and try to just like, let's small ball it out, spread everything out, and just try to run our system to,
We've been monitoring that small ball for almost the whole season, right? Or at least since they traded KP, we've been monitoring this small ball that they can run where they take Dwight out or even put in Maxey, because Maxey can hit a 3. He can. It's possible. It's possible. We've seen him hit 3s. But even when they put him out there, that's a smaller lineup because you can spread the floor all out, and they can do that in a bunch of different ways. They could even do a Dinwiddie, Brunson, Jalen Green, Dorian Bullock lineup, right? Or even with Luka instead of Josh Green in there. And so then all of a sudden that's an even smaller lineup that can do a lot of different things, and you can take advantage of some of Utah's weaknesses that has been shown and proven to be a thing that they can do. And Utah didn't change anything to fix that, right? Like they didn't change anything to fix that. The reason why that Clippers team came back on the Jazz again this year in that fourth quarter collapse was so they went small. We've seen that happen against that team. And so the Mavericks, one of the positives is the Mavericks have now a ability to play against that team that has been proven and shown to be a big weakness against that Jazz team.
Exactly. And that's we don't know a timeline for Luka. We don't. Nope. Jason Kidd opened his post-game pressers like, I don't know. We'll figure out something tomorrow. We'll find
the classic Jason Kidd opening of a post-game presser.
Haven't got to hear it yet. So by the time you're listening to this, he
didn't have it written down though. He didn't have the piece of paper with it written down.
No.
Those are my favorites.
So by the time you listen to this, you might know an actual timeline for Luka's injury, whether he's out for game 1 or not.
Yeah.
I think if he does sit out game 1 and he's not playing in game 1, give me the under on whatever the total points is for that game on BetOnline, because I mean that's the route Dallas is going to have to take to win, right? They're going to have to, and what the irony of it is, we've talked about this defense for so much this season that it could be the defense that wins them a game or 2 or keeps them in this series until Luka comes out. If he has to set out a few games, to where if they're going to win one of these games, hopefully I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be one of these games to where it's like 91 to 85, or it's going to be an 88 to 82 game. And it's like Dinwiddie leads the way with 26 points, and it's a defensive matchup, and they just clamped down and said, hey, we're going to defend our home court until we get Luka back, type of thing. So that's hopefully it's what Jalen Brunson says, and Luka's suiting up for game 1. It's fine. But I think that's the route for them to win if Luka has to set out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where the Mavericks are right now. That's where they're going to be. Any other positives looking into this?
I mean, I'm ready. If y'all are ready to embrace this, I know we're kind of like down right now because of Luka's injury.
The win totally got taken out of it. We should have been so happy. Like, all right, let's go. Bring on the Mormons. We should have been doing that with SJ.
Is anybody else on board to do playoff goatees with me? Because
for Dinwiddie
playoff goatees.
Hold on, I got a Sharpie right here. I'll just
we've seen like playoff beards in baseball, and the Mavs
have done those.
Yeah, Dirk that's one of my favorite Dirk looks back in the days, the beard and everything. I just want to know, maybe we can get this going. Can this be a thing? Started with Locked On Mavs, playoff goatees starting on Saturday for game 1. It's just goatees.
Now that we're on video, I cannot do this. WFA is like, hey, do you want to come on with my scraggly looking terrible goatee?
In honor of Dinwiddie, if you can have a goatee, let's start playoff goatees on Saturday.
Also, what if I just went on with in Community, Abed gets them all felt goatees for the darkest timeline? What if I just came from
Community? Yeah.
What if I came out with a felt goatee, just like a black felt goatee, and I didn't say anything?
I'm about to stain you a goatee on Amazon.
I'll do one. If Dinwiddie has all right, here we go. If Dinwiddie has a 30-point game in the playoffs at any point, I will wear a felt goatee on the podcast the next day.
Oh, for the whole pod.
For the whole pod, unironically, and just not even mention it.
Yep.
Hold me to it, Twitter.
Put it in the bag.
There you go.
I just want to throw this out here too. Next weekend's also a time for resurrection. And what a time.
Hold on. Do I have to get the guitar?
No. We might need an altar call. We might need some prayer right now.
We need to come to Jesus
for Luka's healing. But if Luka wants to resurrect next Saturday for that playoff game, down for it. I'm here to celebrate.
That'd be amazing. Until then,
you heard it here first. If he plays game 1, you're fully getting a Luka has risen tweet. Luka is risen. If we want to go that route.
Until then, we have this entire week planned out. We'll have a crossover with David Locke at some point. We're going back to a live mailbag. We'll definitely do one of them this week. We may do multiple, so check us out on YouTube. We'll be doing league predictions. We'll also have a full preview of the Jazz series. Isaac and I will probably go back and watch a bunch of those games this year. We're also hoping to have a good guest on later in the week. We'll have podcasts every single day until and through the playoffs. We're going every single day. We don't mess around with the playoffs and all that. So you will have a podcast literally every single day until the Mavs are out of the playoffs. So stick with us. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Follow on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Like all our videos. Help us get there. Man, we're excited for this. And thank you guys for joining us this entire season. We're keep pushing.
We're almost to 13,000 subs.
Woo! Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. Now make your second listen. Locked On NBA. I'm going on there with Jackson Gatlin, local experts with covering the biggest stories around the NBA Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On NBA. I'll be there on Thursday as well. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom!